on day 39, when they come back, they vote out of the final 3 who they want to win. 39 days, final 3, you have a chance at being the sole survivor. Now I want you to know that this isn't about me being on national television. What this experience did is it changed my life, and that's why I tell my story. Because I use this experience to explain how your power lies within your interpretation of the situation and your ability to turn adversity into strength. So we would go there and we would take our buffs, and this is, in the game of Survivor, this is a buff. And you can see in this picture, I'm holding my buff. One lady has her buff around her wrist, another one around her head. Basically what a buff does is it indicates what tribe you were on. So you always had to have your buff with you. But we would go to the Espada Spa and we would take sand and we would rub it onto our skin. And then we would take our buffs and we would clean ourselves. That's how we would take a bath. Now I normally don't tell this story, but you guys are such a great group that I'm going to tell you. If you watch Survivor, you can see that these buffs are not very big. Well, being a Survivor watcher myself, I've always noticed that some of the gals on Survivor wear these buffs as little tube tops, or they wear them as little skirts. Well, the third day I was there, I thought, I'm going to put this on as a little tube top, right? So I sneak behind this tree, and I have my pants on and my swimsuit top. And usually, if you sneak off by, or you go off by yourself, the cameramen don't follow you. So I'm standing behind this tree, and I take my swimming suit top off, and I step into this buff, and I get it about right here, and I'm pulling, and I'm yanking, and I cannot get this buff up. Well, as I'm doing this topless, there walks a cameraman. And I was really glad that that wasn't on national television. So you will never see me wear a buff, this buff as a piece of clothing. I always wore it on the top of my head very well with my tribe. And I was worrying constantly. I would sit out there and I would think, oh, I sure hope my husband is mowing the lawn at home. Oh, I sure hope he's doing the laundry. If we preoccupy ourselves with the what-ifs and the worst-case scenarios, worrying can be like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it gets you nowhere. I didn't have any control over what was happening at home, but I was worried constantly about things. I became extremely overwhelmed. I had hundreds of bug bites, the sleep deprivation, the starvation. I didn't sleep the first 3 nights I was out there. And then I did something on national television I should have never done. You see, there was this gentleman on my tribe. And please do not get me wrong, if you can afford these types of things, that's great. But we're in the middle of the jungle trying to survive, and this gentleman is constantly bragging about his $2,500 pair of pants, his $850 sweater, his Ferrari, his Hummer, and he's constantly making fun of me. He told me I talk funny. But when he looked at me and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from South Dakota." He looked back at me and he said, "People actually live there?" I stole his $1,600 pair of alligator shoes, I filled them with sand, and I threw them in the ocean. And I saw myself on national television stealing someone's personal property. It made me realize that anger never pays. I acted out because of his words. I allowed his words to get under my skin. But I've never been so exhausted in my entire life. Most of my adult life, I've been the one to motivate others as a wife, as a mom, as a swim coach for 17 years. And I'm on national television and I can't motivate myself. I started to think about quitting. Defeat is often a temporary condition, but giving up makes it permanent. I hit day 5. I walked up to a producer and I said, "Get me out of here. I can't do this." He said, "Holly, are you sure you know what you're doing?" I said, "I know what I'm doing. I'm done." And then I walked over to Jimmy Johnson, the former NFL football coach for the Dallas Cowboys, who was on my tribe. I walked up to Coach Johnson and I said, "I need to talk to you." Why did I pick Coach Johnson? Because I trusted him. I looked up to him at that point of the game. I needed to talk to someone. And let me share with you what Coach Johnson said back to me.
You know, coming into this game, I was like, I can do this. And then you get here, and it's the whole mental game is totally different.
Right.
I don't know if I can do it.
You can do it one day.
I don't know if I can.
Well, it concerns me that Holly's having second thoughts about the game. She'd like to go home. Yeah, I don't think it's the right thing to do just yet.
I can't do it. I've never failed anything in my life, but I have to be honest.
This is no different than a football player wanting to quit the team. We all go through some adverse times. And, you know, our minds get weak. Vince Lombardi says fatigue makes cowards of us all. Well, yeah, that's what happens out here.
The only thing I ask you to do is give it your best, but we need you. We really do need you.
I know if I quit this game, I'll be letting my tribe down. So I'm going to keep my head up. I'm going to help the team out. And the emotional meltdown that I had today might either carry me through or it's going to hurt me. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see.
It doesn't take someone to be on a reality show to feel this. We all needed Jimmy Johnson in our lives. I would have quit if it wasn't for Coach Johnson. I've never felt so exhausted in my life. I didn't have my cell phone to call my family. I didn't have a computer to ask my family for support. I had to do this one on my own. I walked back to camp. I told Dan I was sorry on national television for taking his shoes. I actually got more hate email for saying sorry to Dan than I did for taking the guy's shoes. But what did I say from the beginning? I wasn't going to let a reality show turn me into someone that I was not. I knew at this point of the game I had to do what was right, not what was easy. The easy thing would have been to quit, walk off, go back to the resort, brush my teeth, sleep in a bed, get fed a meal, but that was not the right thing. No longer trying. We all fail. I say in that clip, I've never failed in my life. That's a false statement. I have failed many times, but failure is not falling down. Failure is staying down. When you fail, that's when you need to get up, you need to brush yourself off, and you need to move on. 3 days later, they voted Jimmy Johnson off. Jimmy Johnson lasted 8 days, and in the 8 days he was there, he lost 18 pounds. He said in his exit interview that this was the hardest thing he has ever done in his life, and he's done 3-day football practices. But I realized at this point of the game, I needed to make some change. Change is hard, but comfort can be a trap, because there's never really a right time to do a difficult thing. The first thing that I needed to change was my attitude. I had a really bad attitude at the beginning of this game. One of the most important steps you can take to reaching your greatest potential in life is to monitor your attitude. You are perceived every single day by your attitude, and it's the one consistent thing you choose to control every day. What was your attitude like this morning when you got up? Did you monitor your attitude? What is your attitude like when you're in a stressful situation? Do you monitor your attitude? How come we hear so much about attitude, but do we monitor our attitudes? Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you as by the attitude that you bring to life. And I'm not saying that a positive attitude is going to solve every single problem in your life, but it's going to make solving those problems so much easier. Jeff Probst, the host of the show, looks at us and he says, "Everybody take off your buffs." I had my buff on my head, so I took my buff off and threw it in front of me, and my first thought was, oh great, I wonder what my hair looks like on national television. Well, we had to reach into this bag. From each tribe, whoever picked the blue rock out of the bag became the captain of your tribe. So as we all reached into this bag, we had a rock in our hand. We couldn't open our hand until everyone had the rock. We put our hand out front, and as I opened up my hand, I had the blue rock. I have never won a raffle in my entire life. And I went from wanting to quit to being the captain of my tribe. Brenda picked the blue rock for the young tribe, and she and I had to go forward, and what we had to do was kids to come over to my side, and Brenda picked 3 of the older castaways to go over to her side. So we were no longer old versus young. We were all mixed up. And then we did a challenge with our new tribe, and at this point of the game, I felt like this was my new beginnings. Why you can. We went on to win this challenge, and this young lady, whose name was Alina, I picked Alina to come over to my side. I didn't know Alina's name because, of course, we didn't know the other tribe. But after we won this challenge, Alina came up and she gave me a hug. And there was only one reason I picked Alina to come over to my side. She reminded me of my youngest daughter, Elizabeth. I had never wanted to go home more in my life. But when Alina came up to me and she gave me a hug, I felt like I just got a hug from my daughter. And I felt like I had new energy and I could go on. We get back to camp and these young kids start following me around. They start calling me Mama Holly. They start asking me, should we leave the fire here? Should we move it over here? I started feeling like I fit in. I didn't feel that with my other tribe. That's life. In life, you are who you associate yourselves with. If you're around people who are negative and who are constantly putting others down, you will become them. But if you're around positive and uplifting people, you will become them. Each and every one of you in this room needs to believe in yourself. The best of the best believe in themselves. It's a proven fact that when your confidence goes up, your competence goes up. I had to have confidence because we went to this next challenge and they told us that everyone was going to compete against each other. We were not going to compete as a team. And whoever won this particular challenge got this necklace. And this necklace was called the Individual Immunity Necklace. If you won the challenge, you won the necklace, you couldn't be voted off that night at Tribal Council. So we had to start at this starting line, and we had this great big barrel hooked to our back. And we had to run a ways, and we had to go into the sandbox, and we had to take this oar and dig up these rings. When you found a ring, you had to toss it in the air, and you had to catch it with that barrel on your back. And then you had to run a ways, take the ring out, and put it on a hook. The first person to get all 3 rings on the hook won the necklace, and you couldn't be voted off that night at Tribal Council. The essence of confidence is the belief in your abilities to accomplish anything you are determined to do. When Jeff Probst put the Individual Immunity Necklace around my neck, he whispered in my ear, "And you wanted to quit day 5. And I looked back at him and I smiled. It truly is about determination. Determination is so simple because all determination is the focus to the finish. I specifically remember Jeff Probst saying these words, "Your ability to draw from within will be what gets you through these last 11 days. I had 11 days left to get to the end. I looked over at the girl beside me and I said, "All I want is a hot dog," because I was so very, very hungry. And then Jeff Probst, the host of the show, got up and he said, "To the winning team only, whoever wants to give up eating and whoever wants to give up going to the movie, you can take back to camp what's on this table under this blanket." As he lifted the blanket up, there was a container of rice and a tarp. And then this young lady sitting beside me raised her hand and we all thought she was going to volunteer. And Jeff looked at her and said, "Yes, Nyanka?" And she looked back at Jeff and she said, "I quit." "You what?" She said, "I can't go on." So we all looked at her and said, "Nyanka, take the tarp and take the rice back to camp. When you quit, you get to go back to that resort, brush your teeth, take a shower." She wasn't volunteering. I had a decision to make. I'm starving. I just want one hot dog. In any moment of decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. The next thing to do is the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. I got up. When my son saw this picture of me on national television, he quickly texted me and said, "Ooh, Mom, I've seen that look before." He's right, he has. I don't stand up here this afternoon to brag, but this is what I did. This is who I am. This is how I wanted people on national television to remember me. I wanted them to remember me as the woman who gave back. Since I've been on Survivor, I've been asked to come to a lot of charity events. I've been to Temecula, California for breast cancer. I go to Orlando, Florida for Give Kids the World. They bring in all these reality stars from different shows, Amazing Race, Big Brother. The last one I was at, they brought 103 of us in. And we sit in these great big rooms and we sign autographs and people pay. And they line up for hours to get your autograph. It's extremely humbling. But it never fails. Someone always comes up to me and says, "Oh yeah, you're the woman that stole those $1,600 pair of shoes." They forget that I was the woman who gave up eating. It's never been mentioned. If you're put in a room with 50 people and 49 people say something nice about you and one person says something bad about you, what do you have a tendency to remember as you walk out of the room? A negative mind will never give you a positive life. I opened up that question one day. I was speaking for a conference and a lady stood up and I said, why do we remember the one bad thing? And she stood up and she said, "It's because the one bad thing makes you feel bad." And I said, "What do the 49 things make you feel like?" Focus on the positive things in your life. Then we get back to camp and this young lady tells me she's going to quit. I looked at her and I said, "Kelly, when our daughters were an 8th grader and sophomore in high school, they made the varsity cross-country team. Came home the 3rd day of practice, took their tennis shoes off, whipped them in the corner and said, 'Mom, we're done. We're quitting.' I said, 'Why?' They said, 'This coach is running us too many miles. We have blisters on our feet. We're just not doing this.' I looked back at them and I said, 'No, you're not quitting because once you quit something once, it's too easy to quit the next time.' They ended up being state champions that year. Hard work pays off. And I told this to Kelly. She still walked off the show. Nayaka and Kelly quit that night at Tribal Council. It has never happened in Survivor history that 2 people walked off the show after the merge. We woke up on day 33 and the producers walked into our camp and they handed us a box. As we opened up the box, there was a cell phone inside the box. We didn't know it, but CBS called our families back home, and when my husband got word that I was still in the game, he was truthfully shocked. Because before I left, he said, "Now, Holly, don't talk so much." So we were shocked. Well, what he had to do is he had to gather our immediate family, and they made this video. And they downloaded this video onto this cell phone, and as I'm in the middle of the jungle on day 33 with 6 days left, I get to see this video from my family. I'm going to share with you a little bit of what I got to see.
Holly, we all know you're doing absolutely fantastic, but we miss you terribly. And the one thing I'm really looking forward to is putting my arms around you as soon as I possibly can. Honey, love you.
I miss him so much.
I took a lot of things for granted in my life. I was always the mom that had to be perfect. Couldn't have a dirty dish in the sink. Oh, that would be terrible. I practically lined my kids' toys up every night before they went to bed. Almost in alphabetical order. Never really took time for myself. I didn't think I needed to. You find out a lot about yourself when everything's taken away. I watched that video 3 times. And then I followed this path to the middle of the jungle and I sat on a log all by myself. And I started to think how relatable this experience was to life. We're all going to face challenges. We're all going to have opportunities. We're always going to meet difficult people. We have to monitor our attitude, but the most important thing that we can do is take time for ourselves. As I walked down the path and I got back to camp, there was something that I didn't know. I didn't know that my husband was sitting in a hotel room in Miami. We had tribal council that night, and there were 7 people left, and whoever's loved one got voted off, they had to turn around and go home. Well, I made it into the final 6, and they called my husband at 10:30 that night and told him that I made it through tribal council, and again, he was shocked. He couldn't believe it. The next day, they flew over to Nicaragua, and we got to the challenge, and we didn't know they were there in Nicaragua until we got to the challenge. Jeff Probst told us that our loved ones were there, and one by one, they introduced our loved ones, and they came running around these grove of trees, and I couldn't wait to see my husband. And of course, my husband was the last one to be introduced. But as my husband came running around this grove of trees, my first thought was, "You have got to be kidding me, he wore that ugly shirt." I don't know why that was my first thought, but it was. But I ran up to him and I wrapped my arms around him and I said, "Honey, I'm sorry, I smell so bad." And he said, "Oh no, you don't smell." And I thought, "No, honey, I smell. You smell so bad at this point in the game that when the producers come in to mic you, they come in with scarves or masks over their faces. That's how you stink." And then we stood there and I said, "Honey, are you mowing the lawn?" And he said, "Yes, I'm mowing the lawn." I said, "And you're doing the laundry and the dishes?" And he said, "Yes, everything's fine." All that worrying for nothing. And then I looked at my husband and I noticed something very unusual about him. But I didn't ask him until I got home. I said, "Charlie, why did you shave your head before you came to Nicaragua?" He said, "Well, when I got word I was going to be on national television, I went down into the garage, I took the clippers and I shaved my head because I didn't want all the women in America to start calling me." And guess what? It worked. He didn't get a one phone. But after Chase and his mom won, Chase got to pick 2 survivors and their loved one to go with them that afternoon on the boat. And he chose us. My husband and I missed our 25th wedding anniversary for me to go and film this show. This was the best anniversary gift I've ever gotten. The gift of time. After my husband left, after the 4 hours, he did make sure to tell me that he got to stay an additional 3 days, and they toured and they stayed up in these really nice suites, and he got to eat and drink all the booze he wanted for free. I was like, "Thank you very much, Charlie, for telling me." But here I am, the last woman in this game. Who would have thought on day 5 I'd have been the last woman standing? We go to this next challenge, and it was a puzzle challenge, and I'm terrible at puzzles. And I didn't win this challenge, and I remember looking up at Jeff Probst and thinking, these guys are going to vote me off. We went to tribal council that night, and if you are a Survivor watcher, you probably see 15, 20 minutes of tribal council on national television. These tribal councils take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. They take forever. If it's pouring rain, you sit there. There's a lot of things at tribal council they don't show. Well, I made it through. Now, I was in a very tight alliance with the gentleman standing right beside me, whose name was Chase. Chase and I were in a tight alliance with the gentleman all the way over to the left-hand side, whose name was Sash. Chase and Sash and I would go out into the jungle, and we told each other, we are not voting each other off. The 3 of us are going to the final 3. We were voting off the gentleman in the middle after the next challenge, whose name was Fabio. That's what we decided to do. I'm on day 38. I have 1 day left to get to the end. On day 38, we went to the final challenge, and before the challenge even started, Jeff Probst looked at the 4 of us and he said, "Whoever wins this challenge gets the individual immunity necklace. You are automatically in the final 3. You cannot be voted off." Fabio, who we were going to vote off, won the challenge. He won the necklace. We couldn't vote him off. We get back to camp, and I make another alliance with Chase. And I said, "Chase, you're not going to write my name down, right?" "No." I said, "Well, who are they voting for?" He said, "They're voting for you." I said, "Okay, we have to vote for Sash. It's going to be a tie." I was prepared for a tie. In case of a tie, you have to do a fire building challenge at the end. I had a Boy Scout leader come out to our ranch before I left to go play Survivor and teach me how to build a fire, just in case I got to this point. Well, before we left for tribal council, I kept looking at Chase to remind him he wasn't going to write my name down. The closer we got to tribal council, he stopped looking at me. I was voted off. But I was not 1 day short. I was 38 days long. Strength does not always come from winning. Your struggles develop your strength. But when Chase finally made eye contact with me, I looked at Chase and I smiled and I winked. It's not how you walk onto the playing field. It's how you walk off. I did not have angerness or bitterness in my heart because I was going home. The next day, I flew to Miami. I stayed overnight there. I was gone for a total of 49 days and I lost 22 pounds. Well, when we were at the finale, I did present Dan with a pair of ostrich cowboy boots for taking his alligator shoes because I felt really, really bad. He did tell me 3 days after I took his shoes that he had 20 more pairs at home, so it didn't work. I was probably in the best shape of my life, even being a high school athlete. I was running 3 to 5 miles 5 times a week. I was biking 12 miles. I was swimming a mile. I was, like I said, I was in very good shape. But I went 13 days with only eating a quarter cup of rice a day. And I went an additional 9 days with eating 2 shellfuls of rice a day. Let me remind you that this is how I looked when I left. When my family got word that I was flying home the end of July, they couldn't tell anyone. Because remember, I wasn't even announced I was going to be on the show until the middle of August. So the only people that came to the airport to pick me up were the people that you saw on the video. They made the video. It was my husband, our 3 children, my mom, and my stepdad. And when I walked around the corner, this is what they saw. I could barely walk. You could see the imprint of my teeth through my upper lip. My mom stood there crying. But my 24-year-old son walked up to me and he put his arms around me and he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." My son had never told me he was proud of me. He said, "I don't care if you won or if you didn't. You just made me proud." Because those words will mean more to $1 million will ever mean to me. The value of words. This is a reality show. This is life. This is reality. It's how we survive in the real world that matters. We are all thriving to survive something. I truly believe I was put on the show for a reason, and that reason being what I learned from this experience, I was able to bring back to the real world of survival, and that's why I share my story with you. I use this experience to explain how your energy, passion, and power lies within your interpretation of the situation and your ability to turn adversity into strength. I truly believe it takes these 6 words: faith, attitude, determination, confidence, desire, and perseverance. Have faith. Choose your own attitude. Don't let someone else choose it for you. Every accomplishment starts with the decision to try. The whole world can believe in you, but if you don't believe in yourself, nothing else matters. Your desire to succeed should be greater than your fear to fail. And most importantly, never give up. She's right. I need to have more confidence in myself. I need to have just a little bit more determination. The choice is yours. But if there's one thing I want each and every one of you to remember, it's this. Never give up, because nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but anyone can start right here today and make a new ending. Take control of your life. Discover your true purpose and create your own future. Make it your mission to be a real world survivor. Energy, passion, power. Thank you very much.